Hi, I'm Rachel Zaleski, and this is the Zaleski Sports Show. And thank you so much for watching, everyone. Today we have in our studio our sports expert, Jason Zaleski.
In the house.
Woo, woo, in the house. And we also have our fantasy football expert, Malachi David. Woo, woo.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice to be here.
All right, all right.
Thanks for coming. So nationally, we're going to just talk about the Milwaukee Brewers. Regionally, we're going to discuss the Wisconsin Badgers football. Locally, we're going to talk about the Stratford Tigers football and also the Marshfield High School soccer team and their game they played last night. And then we're going to wrap up the whole show with a really fun segment about fantasy football.
Yeah.
So, Jason.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, doesn't it sound like fun? So those Milwaukee Brewers, Jason, tell me a little more about how they're doing and have they really improved much since the last time we talked about them?
Well, they've improved slightly is where I'll start. So over the last 10 games, the Brewers are actually 7-3. So they're on a real nice run over the last 10 games. Problem is, they're in second place, and the first place team, the Chicago Cubs, are also 7-3 during this last 10-game stretch. So they're spinning their wheels and they're playing good baseball at the same time. So hopefully that good baseball momentum can continue. We'll need the Cubs to fall apart here a little bit, I think, coming down the stretch. And Malachi and I were talking a little bit prior to the show about the Brewers, and you know, Malachi, I think they're on an upward trend. They beat the Giants last night, 4-3. They play the Giants again to end that series today, here in just a few minutes at 2:45. So by this airtime, check the scores and we'll see what the Brewers did. But they're still 4 games behind the Cubs in the loss standings, and that's I think going to be a problem.
I think so too. I mean, the Cubs are obviously a very good team. They won the World Series last year. And they have the LA Dodgers coming up after the Giants, which is also a very good team. But I think if they can get past the Dodgers and win 2 games, then they have a real good shot.
Yeah, well, they got to keep playing well to just keep pace with the Cubs. The Cubs seem to have also found their groove, especially in August. We've got just a couple weeks left, Rachel, of the baseball season. So it is go time if you want to win a pennant right now.
Yeah, it is. Go time. You want to talk about go time? Hey, let's jump around. Jump around.
Nice.
Woo,
Nice.
yeah,
Right.
let's go. The Wisconsin Badgers football. So this is a really fun time for a lot of college people who love to watch football, college playing football, and then also a lot of other great football fans can't wait for college football to start.
Yeah. Well, and it's just about here. We've got 10 days left until the college football season kicks off. Wisconsin Badgers come into the season. They're ranked number 9 in the preseason polls, and they start out at home against Utah State. That's on September 1st at 8 p.m., so a great way to start your Labor Day weekend. I can't think of a whole lot better things to do than to watch the Badgers come Labor Day weekend. They should cruise over Utah State. They kind of play these cupcake-type teams, although Utah State, I would say, is one level above an Eastern Middle Tennessee church team that a lot of the other teams play. But still, you should be able to cruise past Utah State and have that number 9 ranking. Big Ten is full in the top 10. 3 teams in the top 10 to start the year, and Ohio State's one of them. They'll be the team to beat, I think, in the Big Ten. Malachi, what do you think?
Ohio State, obviously, with Urban Meyer as a coach, is the team to beat in the Big Ten, obviously, each year. Outside of that, Michigan is a very good team with Jim Harbaugh bringing in great recruits every year. So.
Yeah, both formidable opponents for the Badgers. Ohio State, you said, and we both agree, is the team to beat in the Big Ten, maybe even the team to beat in the whole entire country. They come in ranked number 1 on the year, so even ahead of Rachel's Roll Tide. For the moment, we'll see what turns out. So college football season's just around the corner, and we couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. So don't forget, September 1st, first day of school for a lot of people here in Marshfield, and that'll be something fun to watch.
Yeah.
So last Friday, Jason and I went ahead, we traveled all the way north to Stratford.
The real long drive. Yeah.
For the Stratford Tigers football game against Stanley Boyd Orioles, and we have a highlight clip for you, so let's take a look. Welcome to the Zaleski Sports Show Highlight House, sponsored by V&H Automotive in Marshfield. V&H Automotive, a short drive from anywhere, just north of Marshfield on Highway 97. Touchdown, Stratford. Let's take it down to Jason and Coach Tubbs.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome back to the Zaleski Sports Show, where we just watched Coach Tubbs and the Tigers fall tonight, 21-14. Coach, certainly not the outcome you were looking for. Thoughts on the game, though, anyway?
We outgained them, and fought a great game second half. But when you turn and you have a touchdown call back because of penalty, you fumble the ball after a penalty. Those are 2 touchdowns, and you give up a couple big plays. Their scores, all 3 of their scores, were big plays. 4th and goal, kicking a field goal where you're telling the call timeout, hey, there's going to be a fake, and a guy jumps the wrong guy, and that's just the youth in our team right now. Some guys that first time ever starts for us, and they showed that, and hopefully we can learn from our mistakes and continue to get better, which I know they will.
Yeah, okay. Certainly, Coach, you mentioned it. A game of missed opportunities is really probably how we're going to categorize this one. We were in for a touchdown, called back, block in the back. Had a fumbled exchange on the snap coming down the other end on the goal line, and then an interception on a 1st and goal. Are those teachable moments? Are there things you can correct in practice, or are those just inevitable in the game of football?
They shouldn't be. These guys are still juniors and seniors that have been playing their whole life. One interception, the kid fell down. Probably could have been a touchdown, but he fell down, and Corbett made a good throw, and just unfortunately our guy slips. That's kind of how it is with us, And it was a hard-fought game, and our best player gets hurt midway through third quarter, and boy, it made a difference on how our offense too, because he's a 2-way starter and a best tackler. So, but hats off to Stanley Boyd. They're a well-coached team. They don't, they're not going to slow down. They run that no huddle, and they go, and this is a great learning experience for our guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a well-coached team. Coach Canning on the other side. I called a big pass early. Looked like maybe guys weren't quite ready. Is that what you saw?
Well, they run a little tunnel screen, and then number 4 is a special player. There's a reason why he's a finalist for the Altoon in the state of Wisconsin. He's just that type of athlete, and you have those athletes, you can do a lot of great things with them, and give the quarterback credit for hitting him in stride. And down the sideline, our guy had great coverage. He just made a play on him. That's just football.
All right. Looks like defense caught their groove in the second half. Held Stanley Boyd scoreless. What'd you tell the guys during halftime to make that turnaround?
Basically, that all 3 touchdowns they did score were fixable. On the first one, our outside linebacker went outside instead of staying inside, or he blows that play up. A 4th down in the goal line. Just little things that we didn't take care of tonight, and then unfortunately that turned into a loss and being 0-1 instead of 1-0, which is our ultimate goal every week.
All right. Well, non-conference game against Stanley Boyd doesn't maybe count in the grand scheme of things as much as the conference win or loss does. Coach, I think there's many wins ahead this year conference-wise, so best of luck the rest of the year, and thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, and that'll do it here from Stratford, Wisconsin, as we get week 1 under our belt. Guys, it was a lot of fun. Football is back, and Wisconsin is football country for sure. We're looking forward to watching all the area teams play this year, and I know they'll all get back to it, and they're going to give us a lot to cheer for this year. So we look forward to it. Thanks again to Coach Tubbs and the rest of the Tigers. Rachel, back to you.
That was our sports expert, Jason Zaleski, and Stratford Tigers head coach, Jason Tubbs. Thank you for watching the Zaleski Sports Show Highlight House, sponsored by V&H Automotive in Marshfield. V&H Automotive, a short drive from anywhere, just north of Marshfield on Highway 97. The guys played a great game today, and Stratford has a lot to look forward to this year. We'll see you next week on the Zaleski Sports Show Highlight House.
All right, well, thanks again to Coach Tubbs for meeting us after the game. We had a great time watching the game. Certainly, as you saw in the highlight there, Stratford had chances. They had chances all game long. I think, though, they've got a bright future this year. Stanley Boyd's one heck of a team. So to go down 21-14 at home certainly wasn't the outcome they were looking for. Stratford Tigers, Rachel, have a lot to look forward to, as does Marshfield Tigers Soccer.
Yes, Marshfield Tigers Soccer. This team is a really young, fun, and inviting team to come play against. So the Marshfield boys soccer team played against the Holman Vikings last night at Gracie Park, and let's go ahead and watch those highlights now.
Welcome to the Zaleski Sports Show Highlight House, sponsored by PJ's Tropical Paradise. PJ's Tropical Paradise. Tropical wines, unique craft beers with tastings available daily starting at 11. PJ's Tropical Paradise, one door south of Nut Steep on South Central Avenue in Marshfield. Let's send it down to Jason for a match recap with Coach McCann.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, we're visiting with Coach Steve McCann. Coach, first match of the year. Just thoughts overall on how you started the season.
You know, a young team. We lost 8 starters, so a lot of guys playing their first varsity contest. I think the speed of play was, an eye opener for some of the kids. So some stuff to work on in practice. I like a game like today though, because they did some good things, so we can encourage them with that. But then there's a lot of things they need to work on, so we go to practice and build on it. So I don't have enough time in practice tomorrow to work on everything, but we'll work on some of the key things and we'll build on it.
All right, Coach, let's focus on the first half. You went to halftime 2-1, an own goal at the 30th minute, and then Elijah on a PK got you on the 32nd minute. Talk about that first half and just that ability to get a couple goals and go into halftime with the lead.
Yeah, I think Elijah made a nice effort on that ball bouncing and just it kind of spun and kind of went off the defender and kind of pushed it went the net. So that was just a good effort on our player. And then the PK, he's a freshman, steps up to take the kick, so he put it in the corner. So good job for Elijah on that. Could be wide receiver this year to do well set pieces. And you're going to Kyle Sherlin, big guys that can get it there and get their heads on it. Ben Kane likes to head the ball, so I think we're going to try to use set pieces this year to our advantage, get those opportunities. And they looked pretty good in the first half. I was pretty happy with our first half, really.
And then goalie today, Matt Paul, talk about his effort. I thought he put in a real good effort, all things considered. And then his ability to shorten the field with those booming goal kicks.
Yeah, he made some great saves. He's one of our captains, team leader. His punts are, exceptional. To use that to our advantage for change of field position and getting up there. There was times when our team should have been maybe a little bit more aggressive on those balls. Two or three forwards at him. I know we had one guy on it, but we had 3 guys on it, and we kind of used that to our advantage. So, and his goal kicks as well. So that's a strength of our team, and we're going to.
All right, Coach. Holman with the equalizer at the 66th minute, and then that was on a PK of their own, and then the 70th minute go-ahead score, and then they retain the lead from there, ended up winning 4-2. Talk about a little bit about the midfield. It looks like to me you lost the midfield a little bit from that moment on.
Yeah, so that we talked in the half how we were we were playing a 4-2-3-1, so with 2 defensive mids and an attacking mid, we should have a nice triangle in the middle. And with them playing, I think they're playing a 4-3-3. We just had better numbers than them, but we didn't take advantage of it. We had guys a little bit out of position, some guys playing together. It didn't look great. That's one of the areas of soccer I like to do. And that's why I like the 4-2-3-1. So we switched off to a 4-3-3 for maybe the last 12 minutes or whatever. So we tried that, and it actually looked a little bit better at the end.
All right, we're good, Coach. Thanks for spending time with us here on the Zaleski Sports Show. We had a great time watching the match, and we're going to come on and watch a few more, so good luck the rest of the season.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
That was our sports expert, Jason Zaleski, and Marshfield Tigers head coach, Steve McCann. Thank you for watching the Zaleski Sports Show Highlight House, sponsored by PJ's Tropical Paradise. Tropical wines, unique craft beers with tastings available daily starting at 11. PJ's Tropical Paradise, one door south of Nut Steep on South Central Avenue in Marshfield.
All right, well, Rachel, you said it, a young team there for the Marshfield Tigers. I think, though, they're going to have a fun season, too. Those players will grow. They get those opportunities, freshman, sophomore, even junior year. They get out on the pitch, and they really find out a lot in that first game. So I think Marshfield Tigers Soccer, good job, guys. Holman, seasoned team. Elijah had 2 goals. I know one was scored as an own goal, but I'm giving him 2. And things were clicking. It was a great night for soccer last night. Marshfield plays Ashwaubenon, same place, Greasy Park, a week from tomorrow. That's Thursday next week, and we'll see what they can do against Ashwaubenon.
Absolutely. So this is the next part of our segment where we're going to talk a little bit more about fantasy football, but first we want to go ahead and hit something called Sports 101. So we're just going to break down some of those big fancy terms for easier to digest information for us all. So Jason, what is fantasy football? And what are some of the common terms that are being used through that play?
Well, I guess you could say fantasy football is my whole life. I dream about football all day, every day, all year.
He does.
I do fantasize about it, though. Now, fantasy football is it's really a lot of fun. It's a game that we can play where we act as an owner of a team, and we draft actual players from the NFL, and they get sorted out in teams and in leagues that comprise of anywhere from usually 6 to 12. 6 is kind of a low number, but I'd say the average nationwide is about 10. So you get 10 owners together, you compile yourself some teams, maybe 15 players per team, somewhere in there. And then there's some scoring that is involved with that. And back when I first started playing fantasy football, I was about 10 years old. So the year was 1985, if you can drift back with me down memory lane. And
grab some popcorn, kids.
That's right. My dad was the commissioner. Doug was the commissioner for our league. He was also the sports editor for the Marshfield News Herald at the time, so he had access to all the stats and all that type of thing. And he would actually, each Tuesday morning, he would get out his typewriter and he would type out all the box scores of the games after he compiled all the stats from the weekend, and then would hand those out. Some people got them in the mail a couple days later. That's how we played fantasy football in 1985. Now we play fantasy football on a phone or a laptop or a computer. And it does all the scoring for us. As a matter of fact, some leagues will even draft for you. So you just wake up one day and you've got all the best players or all the worst players, and then some kids named Brett Butler want to trade you for players he doesn't like. And we'll get back to that later. But in a general sense, that's fantasy football. Malachi, tell us about some of the different scoring that takes place and how we keep track of points in fantasy football.
Well, you have your standard leagues, which most people just have 6 points for a touchdown, rushing or receiving. You get into more advanced leagues, which, depending on who you ask, people actually enjoy less or more, and that's the PPR league, which is points per reception, which places a higher value on running backs and wide receivers versus quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on that, there's different strategies that then will go around that, and the type of players you want to get on your team. So in a basic format, you want to have the best quarterback, right? And maybe even the best running back. But in the PPR leagues, quarterbacks might come in the mid rounds, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th round. But you're stockpiling those other skill position type players early on. Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit about strategy then, Malachi. That's why we had you here. We're going to just kind of talk about some strategy. Folks are probably getting into draft season right now. I know here on the Zaleski Sports Show that we just drafted our teams a couple days ago. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But as guys and girls are getting around the table right now or going online to rank their players, let's talk about some strategy. I think probably PPR is probably the most common format right now. Maybe just name a player or two that fits that kind of PPR strategy that you're talking about.
I think probably the most efficient player in a PPR league right now is Le'Veon Bell from Pittsburgh. He not only leads his team in rushing, I believe he had 1,600 rushing yards last year, 1,500, something like that. But he also has had 75 or more catches the last 2 seasons, which makes him a valuable asset out of the backfield as well.
Sure. So a player like that is the center of their team, right? So on offense, Le'Veon's going to get the most touches by far during that. So as people are looking and they're getting their strategy together, they might look team by team and find other comparable situations like that. Now, we'll go back to Le'Veon Bell here in just a moment. We'll talk a little bit about strategy from a different point of view. I'll talk at the same time about Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott, both guys that get by far the most touches on their team. They are the center of their team's offense. One guy hasn't been to training camp this year, and that's Le'Veon Bell. So talk about that kind of strategy. Now, oftentimes, over the years, you hear of a guy, I'm gonna hold out, I want a new contract, but really they're just skipping training camp. But a guy like Bell who hasn't been to training camp this year, would you put any emphasis on something like that, or is a veteran like that going to hit the ground running when week 1 starts?
I think in that case, if it were somebody who wasn't as established as Bell, I think you'd put a little more emphasis on it, but he seems to come prepared every year. He's had a couple seasons where he's faced a few suspensions, and he's still putting up the same numbers every year. So I don't think I put too much emphasis on him not being part of camp right now.
Sure, okay. Yep, and you mentioned suspension. Bell was suspended for a few games to start the year last year, but as you said, still had a remarkable year. Still somebody you wanted on your team. And still somebody probably that was drafted in the first round in many leagues last year, even with those suspensions. The other guy I just mentioned, Ezekiel Elliott, is scheduled to sit out the first 6 games this year. due to, in my opinion, an unwarranted suspension. We'll find out, though. He's got an appeal coming up. Strategy on that. So 6 weeks maximum he'll be out. Perhaps that gets reduced. Probably no fewer than 2 games, though, as I sit here right now, and I'll tell you that. Probably no fewer than 2, even if I do disagree with the suspension. How do you strategize on that? Because you know once he gets back here in 6 weeks, he's going to go nuts. And he's still going to be that focal point. But how early can you draft a guy that you know is not going to play the first few weeks?
I guess depending on how you feel about his ability to come back and duplicate his rookie year, he could go as high as the 2nd or 3rd round if somebody's willing to ride out a few games without him. I know with Tom Brady facing the 4-game suspension last year, that was a big thing. People were still taking him in the 3rd round because 12 games with Tom Brady is better than 16 games with, say, Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, and I think that's a good. That's definitely a good comparison too. So maybe another strategy, and I've certainly used this in the past in a situation where Tom Brady, Bell, Elliott, fill in the blank on player that's going to miss the first few weeks, is a handcuff strategy where I'll still take, say in this case, Elliott with my first pick in the 2nd round, knowing I can get Darren McFadden, who's going to be his backup the whole year anyway, and will be the starter of those first few games. I know I can get him probably in the 6th round, maybe even 7th round. Would you agree with that type of strategy?
I would agree with that, especially because there's so many teams now that it used to be a one running back team where you had one guy getting majority of the carries, and now you have so many tandem backfields and guys running 3 running backs out of the offense. So, I mean, if you have the secondary one who's going to see a lot of carries in the absence of the other, it's going to be a beneficial strategy. So.
Okay, yep, and certainly stay alert for that as you're preparing for your draft. Definitely take note of the guys who are going to get the running backs we're talking about now, who will get the majority of those touches, and then those teams where you know that they're going to rotate 2-3 guys in all season long. Those certainly you would stay away from in the early rounds. You may even stay away from those types altogether, especially in those teams that are going to be 2 or 3 running back rotation. Okay, let's move to quarterbacks then. Let's take Tom Brady out of the mix, or maybe even keep him in. Maybe give me the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks to take, and what rounds in a PPR league people should focus on a quarterback.
Everything I've been seeing has, especially in PPR leagues with a little less emphasis on the quarterback, has them at 3rd round, 4th round if you want to get basically your 1A, 1B, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. After that, you can get, say, Drew Brees, Derek Carr, players like that who have high upside and are going to get yards and touchdowns, say 5th, 6th round maybe. So. Okay,
and then in a PPR league where you've got a dual threat type quarterback, say somebody like Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson, those types, they're going to run for 50, 60 yards a game. Maybe they'll even have that big game where they have 90. And they're also going to throw for 175 to 225. Are those quarterbacks worth having in a PPR league? And if so, where do you take those guys?
That's a tough one because I've had Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson may only complete 15 passes a game, but he's going to have 3 or 4 touchdowns in those games. Right. So it's difficult to weigh whether or not the 15 catches for 100 or 15 completions for 170 yards is worth it. But if he's going to put up 3 touchdowns a week, then their value is worth it.
So maybe in that kind of strategy, you might take that guy as your backup quarterback, as your second quarterback that you took during the draft. Go get your Brady, your Rodgers, Drew Brees even earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then we'll just move on to receivers here, and then we'll go to defense, and we'll kind of wrap up our segment here, and then talk about some other things we have going on fantasy-wise for this show. So wide receivers, since 2011, nobody has caught more touchdown passes than Dez Bryant. In the last 2 years, nobody has caught more touchdown passes than Julio Jones. Who are you taking this year?
That is a tough one.
You're on the burner now.
Yeah, or somebody else, or fill in the blank with somebody else.
Well, you have those two who are viable number ones. You also have Odell Beckham, who accounted for 33.4% of his team's yards from scrimmage last year.
Ooh, stats, I like it.
And then you also have Antonio Brown, who, despite the fact that Le'Veon Bell is on his team, is still clearing 100 catches a year. So I don't think you can really go wrong with either of them as a number one option. So
okay.
Now, is Odell injured? There was a little snippet I saw online.
I believe it was a sprained ankle.
Okay. He's a
which
passionate player, so maybe.
they're debating whether or not he'll start week 1. But even if he misses 1 week, he's still worth having.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
could definitely be used with a first-round pick. So.
Yeah. Okay, all right, and then other receivers, Mike Evans, certainly getting better each year, a very reliable, sturdy receiver as far as at points scoring. Jordy Nelson, who I still think is the best route runner in the NFL. He'll be there for the taking in those first couple rounds. And then as we go down the list, Doug Baldwin, you mentioned Russell Wilson. So when he's throwing touchdowns, a lot of times I go to Doug Baldwin. And certainly some of those names we need to keep in mind as you go down the list. On my list here, T.Y. Hilton is ranked really high. I find the Colts offense to be really poor, and I don't know that I would take, even though he's a name brand, you might stay away from some of those types.
I would agree, just because I believe 2 or 3 years ago, T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck had a phenomenal year. But since then, Luck has had health issues. Their offensive line isn't very good in Indianapolis. So Hilton has seen a decline in his stats, which doesn't really benefit you as a fantasy owner, but he's still a possible option in the flex position.
Okay, yeah, and that's a good point out there in that flex position. So, all right, let's move to defense now. Again, back in 1985, I was a kid, watched my dad type out the stats. Defenses weren't anything that we did. That's really become popular in the last 10 years or so. So who are the top defenses that we should look to take, and then what rounds are you suggesting people look for a defense?
Well, the two that come to mind, Seattle is a perennial top defensive team. And as much as it pains me to say, Minnesota has a phenomenal defense.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It pains me to say, but Minnesota has a phenomenal defense.
Oh, yeah, I thought so too. Sounds
Especially their secondary. They shut down a lot of good wide receivers. Those would be two that I'd look to. Usually I try not to take them before the 10th round just because I feel there's not a substantial difference at that point in defense. But, I mean, if you're defensive focused, there's definitely some good teams to be had. Denver also has a solid secondary and defense as well. So.
Now, what I've seen sometimes in the past is when you get that top defense, you'll take a second defense later on. I've seen some people in a strategy, depending on how your league is set up, that don't have a requirement to carry two defenses. So if I get that middle tier, say that 10th through 15th or 18th ranked defense, I might just take the one, and then when their bye week comes up, drop them, and then pick up another defense. Would you do something like that if you had one of those lower ranked defenses?
If I had a lower ranked defense and there's somebody that's comparable, I'd probably let them go for the week. If I have one of the top ones, they're not leaving my roster. I'd probably rather play without a defense at that point.
Rather than drop somebody like the Seahawks or the Vikings for sure, because somebody would snatch them up right away for sure. So, okay. So, yep. So I think the strategy there, if you get one of those top defenses, you might even consider drafting a second defense later on just for that bye week. Or, like you said, just go without those maybe 10 points that week. And hopefully somebody else on offense can step up and fill that gap. So that's all part of the strategy. But it's a lot of fun to talk about. Fantasy football season's a lot of fun. Again, that's where we get to act like owners. We get to make decisions. We get to trade. We get to waive players. You get to draft. Boy, it's a lot of fun and definitely makes football a little bit more exciting. You end up watching all the other teams instead of just that team that you watched every Sunday. So that's what's made it fun for me over the years, for sure.
My favorite part of fantasy football is the names, coming up with team names. So back in the day, I had a team that was called the Norse Force, and now my current fantasy football team for our show is called the Shake and Bake.
So with that being said, the Zaleski Sports Show Fantasy Football League is in action, and we had our draft just a few days ago.
I gotta check if I got what's his name?
Yeah, you better check. And while we're going through that, so we do have some interesting team names. Tiger Snooze, If You Ain't First, You're Last. Team Football and Stuff. Marshfield's Avengers. Big Ballers, Shake and Bake. Team Fun with Wine. That could be a fun team too. I don't know if they'll score a lot, but they'll be having fun.
Right. They'll be having fun.
Team Megahertz, I like that one. Double meaning with that. Team Has No Name, and Team Joe Buck Sucks. So we're going to have a lot of fun this year. Each week we'll have updates on the show. That'll kind of be how we'll end, just like we'll do today. Let's have a lot of fun with it. We won't poke fun at each other too much, and we'll see. Maybe somebody here knows more about football than Malachi. We'll find out.
possibility.
Yes. Well,
All right.
thank you so much, Malachi, for being on the show today.
No problem.
This is
Thanks
the
for
Zaleski.
having me.
Oh, yes, thank you. So this is the Zaleski Sports Show. I'm Rachel, your host, and I want you all to have a fun week. And yay, football is here.
Go Sports!